Adam Small here again from My Music Masterclass, and today we're going to review a fretless bass from Glarry. The model of this bass is just called the Fretless GP bass, and it's a full scale bass, meaning it's 34 inches. The body of this bass is basswood, the neck is maple on this side, the fingerboard is rosewood, the color is burleywood. It's a passive bass. It has one precision style pickup right here with just a volume and tone control right down there. This bass is pretty light at 6.72 pounds, and let's get to the disclaimer. Glarry sent us this bass in exchange for this video review, but they didn't tell us to say anything specific or coach us in any way. All of our reviews are always unbiased on this channel, and this will be no different, so let's get to it. All right, so I just tuned this thing up, and I just played it for a second off camera, and I have to tell you, this thing isn't really playable out of the box. It's gonna need a little work, and let me show you what I mean. Essentially, it seems that this bass left Glarry's factory without being set up at all. And what I mean is like bridge adjustments and truss rod adjustments. The neck isn't that off. The neck seems to be pretty straight, even with a little relief, but the action and the intonation weren't set up at all, which is unfortunate because most people want to be able to play something when they get it right away. Now this is what it sounds like. You can hear that it's totally bottoming out. Now I'm not playing hard at all. This is actually I'm playing pretty softly. Now the G string isn't so bad, right? But the two middle strings, the A and the D, are super buzzy. So I'm gonna try to set this up myself and see if I can get it to be playable. And if I can do it in a normal amount of time, I'll be back with the rest of this video and we will take it from there. All right, so I'm back here and I just set this thing up, and it was actually a lot of work, and I'll explain. So the first thing was that it didn't appear that anyone really set this bridge height before leaving the factory, meaning that typically a bass bridge is set to match the fingerboard radius. The fingerboard radius meaning that a neck isn't typically flat like this, usually has a little bit of a curve. So in order to get the best action on your bass, you usually want to set up the bridge to match this curvature, meaning that every string is at the perfect height, whether it be low action or middle action or whatever you want, but you want it to match the curvature of the fingerboard. So I had to do that first. Lastly, and the most time-consuming part of this process for me, was setting the intonation on this thing. Now, for those of you who don't know, bridge saddles also move this way and this way, not just up and down. So for the action, you go up and down, but for the intonation, you got to go either closer to the headstock, I mean, it only goes about, this far, or back. And that'll either make it flat or sharp around the 12th fret, which is how you're supposed to do your intonation. I'll show you that in a minute. I'm just kind of glossing over this. But essentially, the intonation was way off, like super off, as if it had never been set. So I had to do that, and it's trickier to do that on a fretless instrument, and I'll explain that in a second when I get the fretted bass out. But before I get the fretted bass out to show you something else that's important here, I have to say that I know how to set up instruments because I've done it before. I've set up basses and I've done my own thing. But if you don't know how to do this, it's gonna cost you somewhere between, I don't know, probably somewhere around 50 bucks. It could cost a little less maybe if you don't get strings with it, or if you know someone that's just less expensive, but it can even be as high as like $75. Now, that is something to take into account if you're getting a bass and you're willing to spend around $100 or however much this costs, that it may need a heavy setup when you get it, and if you can't do it yourself, that could cost some money. This review is about a fretless precision style bass, a fretless P bass. This is a fretted P bass. Now, why am I showing that to you? First, let's start with the intonation thing I was just talking about. If you're setting intonation on a fretted instrument, what you do is you play the harmonic on the 12th fret right here, and then you press down and you play the note, and you got to get them to match. You got to make sure that your E, your A, your D, and your G strings are all in tune at the 12th fret, or else all these notes up high are going to be way, way off. which is what happened when I started doing the intonation on the fretless. It was way off up here, so I had to set it. It's harder on a fretless because, well, there's no frets, so you have to be very accurate. Another thing on fretted instruments, so this is a 34-inch full-scale P bass. Every one of these frets is exactly where a note should be if this instrument is set up properly and intonated properly. So this should be a G if I play this. I don't have to, if I play this G right here, I'm gonna try to zoom in so you can see this. So this is like right near the fret, right? Right before it. It should be the same exact note if I play it over here, because I'm still in this fret width. You see what I'm saying here? I'm between these 2 points. If I play it right in the middle, it'll still be sounding exactly where this fret is because I'm pressing the string down. Again, this is where the note is. This is important because with a fretless bass, you're trying to hit it right where that fret would be. So with many fretless basses that I've played, they either have markings on the frets themselves, so you know exactly where the intonation is, or they'll have dots on the top, but exactly where the intonation is, not the dots that are in the middle, because these dots don't do anything to help you play the instrument. They're like actually get in the way if you're playing a fretless, and I'll explain that when we get to this one here. Because again, you don't want to play your note right in the middle if you're on a fretless. That'll be out of tune. So unfortunately in this situation with this fretless bass, instead of marking the frets, which will actually help you play in tune, they just left the display dots, which actually don't help you play in tune. They don't have them directly on the neck, but they have them on the top here. I set this camera up directly over the neck so you can see what I'm talking about. Now you can see this is a G, right? This is the 3rd fret. But right here is where the note actually is. Check this out. See, I'm checking it now with my G string. Now watch, I'll play an A. Now this is A right here, but watch, it's over here. See? That's my A string. Now I'm gonna fret it. If I play it directly on the dot, watch what happens. Now that's not an A. That's an A. So you can see that this could be tricky if you're new to fretless playing, because it might be easier with no dots at all, because these dots really, they're kind of a distraction. They're not helpful. Now I'm gonna say what every professional fretless bass player would say, which is that you're not supposed to rely on the lines or the dots when you're playing fretless. You're supposed to rely on your ears. And that is 100% true, but it takes a long time to get there. Even professional bass players that are great at playing fretted instruments, it takes them years to get their intonation right on fretless. And sometimes they never do. I mean, it's a very, very difficult instrument to play in tune. So even for seasoned bass players, not beginner players, it's hard to play a fretless in tune. So having markings that are in the right place is definitely helpful, especially if something's geared towards beginners. And many of Glarry's instruments are marketed towards beginners, you know, mainly because of the price point. I think this is about $100, this bass. And if you're a beginner and you want a fretless, that's a whole nother conversation, because as a beginning bass player, my opinion is that you should play a fretted instrument. You shouldn't start on fretless, because there's just so many more things that you have to worry about besides playing the basics, which is having good time, being able to play up and down the neck, being able to play bass lines or melodies or whatever you're trying to do. But if you're starting on a fretless and you already have to deal with the intonation factor, that's going to be incredibly frustrating to either you or your bandmates or both. Now, if you happen to want a fretless bass because of one of your heroes has one of your bass heroes or anything like that, and you're not really an experienced player, of course, you can get whatever you want and you can work on it. And there are ways to work on your intonation. But it's not an overnight thing. Like with a regular bass, with frets, you can learn how to play things without worrying about these real nuances. Like if you play this note in and this is G. Now watch how, if I just roll my finger, it's out of tune. Now it's in tune, right? Same with a G, right? I'll play the same note. So this is a G, and I'll play my G string. Now watch how I can make it out of tune without even moving hardly. See, I didn't even move my finger, I just rolled it a little bit, and I can get it out of tune. Which is why people use side-to-side vibrato. See, my A's in tune. But if you look up here on this cam, you can see that my A, again, it's not near that dot, right? Now that I got some of the technical details out of the way on this bass, how does it sound? Well, here. And as you can hear, it actually has kind of a nice sound. You can do fretless specific things like sliding harmonics, right? Let's get this one and let's slide it. That's something you can't do on a fretted bass, right? So that's cool. Also, let me circle back when I was talking about intonation. I took my overhead camera away, so you're gonna have to trust me on this. This is where the double dots are, and I'm gonna play a little to the side, but when you hit a harmonic, you'll know when you really hit it. You'll be able to hit it slightly around where the note is, but when you really hit it strong, it'll be pure. So check this out. You can kind of hear it, right? But that's not it. Hear how much stronger it is here? That's the pure harmonic. So if I press down, it should be the actual note there. And that's how you know you really hit harmonic. Like I said, I can move my hand around and you can kind of hear it, but this isn't it fully. That's full. And that's where my note should be. Yeah, I mean, it actually sounds nice to my ears. I actually like the sound of it. If I were to modify this thing, I would definitely change the nut on this. The nut is not great. It makes playing in first position a little bit high. I would check the neck to make sure there's no high spots, because I think there's a couple little high spots on it. And yeah, you could always go down the rabbit hole of replacing your pickups or your bridge or any of that stuff, but it sounds pretty good to my ears. It's just these other little things that you'll just have to decide, is it worth getting it for yourself? So I would say that if you're a really good fretless player and you have really solid technique on a fretless and you already have good intonation, and you want a bass that you can modify and do crazy things with, this could be a good choice because it only costs about $100. So it is a vessel for modification. If you're a first-time fretless player and you want some kind of dots or lines, this doesn't have that. So it's not going to guide you through the process of developing your intonation. You're going to have to use your ears the old-fashioned way and just work it out. Also, it might not come set up perfectly. I looked at some reviews online and it looked like some people got these things out of the box and they played pretty well. So maybe the fact that I got one that wasn't set up at all was the outlier of the situation. It's hard for me to tell because this is all I have to review here. So all that being said, I'm sure I'll be playing this thing around the studio because it's fun for me to play different instruments, and I haven't played fretless in a while, so it'll be fun for me to see if I can get my intonation back to where it was. And I'm sure I'll mess with this thing. You could always get those dot stickers, like they're like fret marker stickers, and put them on the top here, or put them here on your fretboard to where the intonation actually is, and do stuff like that as well. I don't know if I'll do that or if I'll just play by ear like I usually try to do. But yeah, So that's it for now. I hope this video explored some parts of this bass that maybe you didn't see in other videos. And please subscribe to the channel, like the video if you liked it, comment if you have anything positive or negative to say, and I'll see you in the next one.